And welcome back from that break, Pete's. We are here in the JJ Zone. Join the Journey Radio today, talking about celebrating your independence with, Independence Day just around the corner, where America celebrates the birth of its nation, into the world space. This holiday has just been. I think it's diminished over time. I mean, this used to be a real celebration of freedom and liberty, and all of the principles upon which the country was founded. Uh, But today it's just basically revolved into this day when let's go out and barbecue some meat and hamburgers and hot dogs and for, for much of the country, let's go get drunk and let's just see fireworks. And I'm not saying that you know, cooking up the old Barbie and seeing some boom in the sky. I mean, those aren't necessarily bad things, but I think a lot of this just takes us away from the real purpose of the day. And I thought, what can we do to get some of that back? And I thought, what can I do for the program that can also, at the same time, help Latter-day Saint singles live better lives? I thought, perfect right here, right? It's like celebrate your independence. Celebrate the independence that you have from the old you, from the habits that have been holding you back from having the life that you really want, a life that will bring maximum joy to you. Now, the question has always been, how do you achieve that? And the answer on this program has always been, well, you start by changing the way that you think. And it's like I mentioned in the monologue. It's like this is the first thing that trips up so many of us, right? It's like we have this vision of how we want our lives to be, and yet it doesn't quite come through. It doesn't quite come through. And a large part of that is because of the way that we think. See, when you understand that at the end of the day, we all want results. Where do results come from? As I said time and time again on this program, results come from one thing and one thing only, and that is action. Well, where's your action come? Your action is based in your thinking. Okay, you're going to act in conformity with the way that you think. You're not going to, long term, you're not going to act inconsistent with the way that you think. We're just not built that way biologically. And the way that the brain is hardwired is to operate out of habit. So 95% plus of what you do every day is performed out of some habit that you've developed. There's an external stimuli that triggers the habit that you've developed. And so when you see that external stimuli, the trigger event happens, and your brain, the biological hardwiring in your brain starts looking for, okay, what's the habit connected with that trigger event? And then it finds a habit and it plays out the habit. That's the way most of what we do every day actually happens and takes place. So you got to start with your thinking, because everything comes out of it's all in your head. Everything comes out of your thinking. So, getting your thinking straight is the first step toward living the life that you really want. And if the results that you're seeing are not coming, you need to go back and question your thinking. You need to go back and look at the assumptions that you're holding, the perspectives that you have, the attitude that you have, the self-talk, these messages that we give ourselves. You got to back and look at all of this stuff. Because if you don't get this right, then everything else is not going to be right. Because everything comes back to this. I mentioned in the monologue, there are faulty assumptions that many LDS singles have that hold them back. And I gave some of the more common examples. Now, the list I gave was not exhaustive. But in this portion of the program, this segment, I want to go through and let's examine each one of those assumptions, because again, you got to get the thinking right. And the assumptions that I did list in the monologue are some of the more common ones that I've encountered in my experience interacting with singles all throughout the country. So let's take a look at each one. The first one I mentioned was insisting that your future can't be different than your past. There are so many of us who are just, we can't, how do I say this? Uh, you know, we can't seem to see past our own noses. I remember I was like this when I was in my 20s, and I was thinking, gosh, I just haven't had much success at this dating thing. I don't know why I keep asking. It's not going to turn out any different. Again, I was basing the assumption that it's not going to be any different in the future than it was in the past, was driving the action, or rather the inaction, towards dating. Think about that. Think about that for a minute. It's like you drive this assumption, but when you actually examine the assumption, you see that it's patently false. I mean, if everyone's future was invariably the same as their past, then no one would ever change. No one would ever, overcome obstacles or get better or improve or, come out of nowhere to be a champion. Or we've all heard these stories of how people have overcome their challenges and come off conqueror. And that same ability that they had in them, you have in you. This assumption that your future is going to be the same as your past is patently false. Now, I will say this. If you're not doing anything differently than you were previously, you don't make any changes in your approach, then I can almost guarantee you your future will be exactly the same as your past. Because again, results come from action. So same action leads to same results. If you don't do anything different, you're going to get the same thing out. So your future will be the same as your past unless you make changes in you. And this is the glorious principle that we have working for our advantage, because our Heavenly Father, in His grace and mercy, has given to us the gift of agency. Think about that for a minute. The gift of agency. We can choose to make changes. We can choose to make changes in ourselves. We can make changes in how we approach other people. So in effect, our future doesn't have to be the same as our past. It's only the same if we don't make any changes. The next assumption that was faulty that a lot of people have is they're just not good enough. I'm just not good enough. I'm not getting the results that I want, and it's because I'm just not good enough. I'm not good looking enough. I'm not thin enough. I'm not handsome enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm not muscular enough. I'm not rich enough. I'm not cool enough. I'm not coordinated enough. I'm not whatever enough, and the list goes on, and we just berate ourselves. And again, this goes back to the self-talk. You give yourself these messages of how you're not good enough, and you do that long enough, you begin to believe it. It doesn't matter that it's not true. You tell yourself this long enough, you'll psych yourself into believing that it actually is true, even though it's not. The fact of the matter is, many of us are good enough, and in the instances where we're not good enough in one particular thing, so it's like we're all good enough in something. But if you're looking for results in a particular area and you're not getting the results that you want, it may very well be a sign that you aren't good enough. But the thing that you have to change is the message that you give yourself, right? It's like, because most people, they get that, and the way they process it is, well, I'm just not good enough, so why even bother trying? And that's what you got to change. Okay? If you're not good enough as you are now, then change you. Work on you. Work on changing you so that you become good enough. And those changes you need might not happen overnight. And for most things that are of value, they won't happen overnight. But I can guarantee you this, that if you stay on course, you keep at it, you keep working on what you need to do to change yourself, and you're consistent with it, then eventually you will find the change, because in the end, we are what we consistently do. So you keep making those small, deposits, accumulating your little pile of success until it grows and grows until it becomes so large that it becomes undeniable. That everyone has to acknowledge it, that you have the success that you want because you were consistent in making those small little daily deposits into your success account. So maybe you aren't good enough as you are now, but that's not an assumption that you should have that should bind you and be like forever permanently holding you back. You can make changes in you. So maybe you aren't good enough as you are now. Well, okay, make the changes you need to make in you. Become good enough. All the good ones are gone. Yeah, how many times have we heard that expression? Okay, I've got news for you. Okay, if you think all the good ones are gone, then maybe you need to change your definition of what good means. If you're responding to the natural man or the natural woman, you're not going to want to question what you consider good to be, because good in the mindset of the natural man or the natural woman is someone who has, the desirable features of evolutionary biology. And so you either have it or you don't. And, that kind of perspective on the world is not one that's going to lead to our maximum joy and happiness, because it's all focused on this. It's all focused on this world and this life. It has nothing to do with eternity. The natural man and the natural woman do not prioritize making and keeping sacred covenants. They're not interested in, looking at this life as a portion of, the pathway that we're on into eternity. They look at this life as a sum bone of our existence. That's it. And you've got a window of opportunity to spawn the next generation. And you miss that, that's it. So all the good ones are gone? Yeah, I mean, that's a faulty assumption, because there are lots of good people out there that, first of all, you don't see them because your definition of good is faulty and based on what the natural man and the natural woman desires. So you need to correct that. And then second, saying all the good ones are gone, most people just look at what's in their backyard. They want perfection to show up in their backyard so they don't have to go looking for something somewhere else. Well, I'm sorry. Sometimes the goodness that you're looking for is not in your backyard, and maybe you need to expand your vision and reach out a little bit. The wonderful thing about, living in the 21st century is we've got this wonderful, marvelous technology called the internet that allows us to connect with people outside of our backyard. So maybe learning how to leverage that and connecting with other people that are not necessarily living in your area, and not necessarily doing it for like dating purposes, but just learning how to network and grow your own personal social network. That can maybe be the stepping stone that you need, so that you find the good one that you thought was gone, but the reason why you thought it was gone is because that person's not living in your backyard. Again, assumptions that are just plain faulty. Okay, these are the three big ones that I've seen. There are plenty more, because our brain will use whatever else whatever it needs to convince ourselves to maintain a status quo. And I can see I'm well over time for a break. Let me go ahead and take that break now. And when we come back from the other side, I want to pick up this discussion about how our brains are biologically hardwired to hold us back from achieving the fullness of our potential. And again, this is related to the natural man, the natural woman. And, we've got to overcome that. We've got to overcome that, or we're just not going to have the maximum amount of joy that is available to us in our lives. So, stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back after this break. See you there on the other side.